Little scared girl finds safety in billionaire's car, the choice that changed everything. The Harmattan wind swept through the ancient grounds of the University of Ibadan, carrying with it the fine dust that painted the world in shades of brown and gold. It was December 1998, and the campus was alive with the usual end-of-year activity, students rushing to submit final assignments, the distant sound of carols from the chapel, and the ever-present hum of conversations under the massive trees that had stood witness 2 decades of academic pursuits. Bayo Adewale sat alone on a worn wooden bench beneath the sprawling branches of a mango tree near the Faculty of Arts building. In his hands, he held a photograph creased at the edges from countless viewings of himself and Funk at their 5-year anniversary dinner just 2 months ago. They had gone to that small restaurant in Bodea, the one with the red checkered tablecloths and the stubborn ceiling fan that never quite managed to cool anyone sitting beneath it. Funk had worn a green dress, her favorite, and had laughed when the waiter accidentally spilled water on the table. She had laughed a lot that night. 5 years. The words echoed in Bayo's mind like the persistent ringing of a church bell. 5 years of his life shared with Funka Kinwale. 5 years of morning phone calls and evening study sessions. 5 years of introducing her as my girlfriend to friends and family. 5 years of planning a future that, he now realized with painful clarity, he had never truly wanted. It wasn't that Funk was a bad person. In many ways, she was everything a man could want. She was ambitious, studying law with a determination that impressed even their toughest lecturers. She was beautiful in a sharp, striking way, high cheekbones, intelligent eyes that missed nothing, a smile that could light up a room when she chose to deploy it, and she was fiercely loyal, defending Bayo against anyone who dared speak ill of him with a ferocity that sometimes bordered on frightening. But something had been missing. For 5 years, Bayo had tried to ignore the hollow feeling in his chest when he was with Funk. He had told himself that love was a choice, not a feeling. He had reminded himself that relationships required work, that the initial spark of romance inevitably faded into comfortable companionship. He had looked at other couples, the ones who still gazed at each other with wonder after years together, and wondered why he and Funk had never quite achieved that. They were like 2 parallel lines, moving through life side by side but never truly intersecting. They shared a history, a routine, a future plan, but they did not share souls. Then he met Adesua Okafor. It happened on a Thursday afternoon in the 3rd week of November. Bayo had gone to the university library to research his final year project on educational psychology. The main reading room was crowded, as it always was during exam season, so he had wandered to the lesser-used section on the 2nd floor, the one dedicated to ancient history texts that nobody seemed to read anymore. She was standing on a rickety wooden stool, reaching for a book on the top shelf. The stool wobbled precariously, and Bayo's instincts kicked in. "Please, let me help you before you break your neck." She turned, startled, and in that moment, the stool gave way completely. Bayo lunged forward, catching her before she hit the ground. They ended up in an awkward tangle on the floor, him on his back, her on top of him, the book she had been reaching for landing with a thud beside them. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she started to laugh. It was the most beautiful sound Bayo had ever heard. "I'm so sorry," she gasped between giggles, scrambling to get up. "I'm so sorry. Are you okay? I didn't hurt you, did I?" Bayo lay there, staring up at her, completely unable to speak. She had the kind of face that painters dream of capturing, not conventionally beautiful in the way of magazine covers, but genuinely lovely in a way that went far deeper. Her eyes were large and warm, the color of dark honey, and they sparkled with genuine concern and lingering amusement. Her skin was the rich brown of properly brewed cocoa, smooth and glowing with health, and her smile, that smile seemed to reach out and wrap around his heart like a warm embrace. "Hello?" she said, waving a hand in front of his face. "Did you hit your head? Should I call a doctor?" Bayo finally found his voice. No, I'm fine. I think I forgot how to breathe for a moment." She helped him up, her hand warm in his, and they both dusted themselves off. Up close, he could see that she was slightly shorter than him, with a figure that was soft and feminine without being frail. She wore a simple blue skirt and a white blouse, nothing fancy, but on her, the plainest clothes looked elegant. "I'm Adesua," she said, extending her hand. "Final year history, and you're my hero for the day, even if you did end up as my landing pad." "Bayo," he replied, shaking her hand and immediately noticing how small and delicate it felt in his final year education, "and I've never been happier to be a landing pad in my entire life." She laughed again, and Bayo felt something shift in his chest, something fundamental, something that terrified him even as it thrilled him. They talked for hours that day. They started in the library, whispering about their courses and their families and their dreams for the future. When the librarian shushed them for the 3rd time, they moved to the cafeteria, where they continued talking over cups of sweet tea that grew cold because they were too absorbed in conversation to drink them. When the cafeteria closed, they walked through the botanical gardens, watching the sun set behind the old buildings and painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Adesua told him about growing up in Enugu, the youngest of 6 children, the only one who had made it to university. She spoke of her mother with such love in her voice that Bayo could almost see the woman, a hard-working market trader who had sold yams and plantains for 20 years to put her children through school. She spoke of her father with gentle sadness, a teacher who had died when she was 12, leaving behind a legacy of learning that had inspired her to pursue education. Bayo found himself telling her things he had never told anyone about his own childhood in a small Ondo town, about his parents' modest means and their fierce determination that their only son would have opportunities they never had, about his secret dream of not just teaching, but of one day opening a school for underprivileged children. When he finally looked at his watch, it was past 9 o'clock at night. They had been talking for nearly 7 hours. "I should go," Adesua said, though she made no move to leave. "My roommates will think I've been kidnapped." "Can I see you again?" The words tumbled out before Bayo could stop them. "Tomorrow? For lunch? Or breakfast? Or, any time really, I'll be wherever you want me to be." She smiled that beautiful smile. "I'd like that, Bayo. I'd like that very much." The weeks that followed were the most extraordinary of Bayo's life. He and Adesua saw each other every day for meals, for walks, for study sessions that inevitably turned into more conversations. He learned that she had a passion for old Nollywood movies and could quote entire scenes from classics like Living in Bondage. She learned that he had a secret talent for drawing and had filled several sketchbooks with portraits of people he saw on campus. He learned that she sang in the university choir, her voice a clear, sweet soprano that could reduce him to tears when she performed. She learned that he wrote poetry, terrible poetry, he insisted, but when he finally showed her some of his work, she declared it beautiful and made him promise to write a poem just for her. He learned that she cried at weddings, at the endings of sad movies, and whenever she thought about how proud her father would have been to see her at university. She learned that he still slept with a worn-out teddy bear his mother had given him when he was 5, and that he was secretly terrified of cockroaches despite being a grown man. Every moment with Adesua felt like coming home to a place he had never known he was searching for. With her, there was no performance, no pretense, no careful calculation of words and actions. He could be completely, utterly himself, and she looked at him as if he were the most precious thing in the world, and that terrified him, because Funk was still there. Throughout those weeks, Funk had been busy with her own life, moot court competitions, law society meetings, the endless reading that her course demanded. She hadn't seemed to notice that Bayo was increasingly absent, increasingly distracted. When they did talk, brief phone calls, hurried meetings between classes, she talked mostly about herself, her achievements, her plans. She didn't ask about his days. She didn't notice that his answers had become shorter, more guarded. Bayo knew he had to end things. He knew it was unfair to Funk to continue a relationship that his heart had already left. But every time he steeled himself to have the conversation, he remembered the 5 years they had shared. He remembered that she had aborted a pregnancy early in their relationship because he had convinced her they weren't ready for a child. He remembered that she had stood by him when his father was sick, had sent money from her own meager allowance to help with medical bills. He remembered that she loved him, or at least, she loved the idea of him, the future they had planned together. How do you tell someone who has given you 5 years of their life that it hasn't been enough? How do you explain that love cannot be earned through loyalty and longevity, that it either exists or it doesn't? By mid-December, Bayo could no longer avoid the truth. He was in love with Adesua, deeply, completely, irrevocably in love, and continuing to pretend otherwise was a cruelty to everyone involved. He asked Funk to meet him at their spot, the bench under the mango tree where they had shared their first kiss, their first "I love you," their first serious conversations about the future. She arrived looking beautiful in a yellow dress, her hair freshly braided, her smile wide. "This is a nice surprise," she said, sitting close to him. "I was starting to think you'd forgotten about me with all your project work." Bayo's throat was dry. His heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his temples. "Funk, we need to talk." Something in his voice must have alerted her, because her smile faltered. "Talk about what?" "I've met someone." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and terrible. Funk's face went through a series of rapid transformations: confusion, disbelief, and then something darker. "What do you mean, you've met someone?" "I mean, I've met someone. Her name is Adesua, and I've realized that what we have, it's not fair to either of us to continue." Funk stood up abruptly, her body rigid. "Not fair? Not fair? 5 years, Bayo. 5 years I've given you. I've been faithful to you, I've supported you, her voice cracked. I aborted a child for you, Bayo, our child, because you said we weren't ready, and now you're telling me you've met someone?" Bayo stood too, reaching for her, but she jerked away. "I know, Funk. I know what you've given up, and I'm grateful. I don't want your gratitude. I want your commitment. I want the future we planned. Funk, please. We were young when we started this. We've grown into different people. You must feel it to the distance between us, the way we've become more like roommates than lovers. Is that what you tell yourself to feel better? Her voice was rising, attracting the attention of students passing by. You're throwing me away for some woman you've known for 5 minutes? It's not like that then. What is it like, Bayo? Tell me. Explain to me how 5 years of my life means nothing. Bayo's own voice hardened. He was hurting, yes, but he was also frustrated. It doesn't mean nothing. It means everything. But love isn't a transaction, Funk. You can turn it by putting in time. It's either there or it isn't, and for me it isn't. Not anymore. Maybe not ever the way it should have been. Funk stared at him, and, in her eyes, he saw something shift. The pain was still there, but underneath it, something else was rising, something cold and hard and infinitely more dangerous. You will regret this day, Bayo Adewale. Her voice had dropped to a low, venomous whisper. You think you found happiness? You think this woman is your soulmate? I curse this marriage before it even begins. You will never know peace. You will never hear the cry of a baby in your home and be happy. I curse your children before they are even conceived. Mark my words, Bayo, you will pay for what you've done to me. She turned and walked away, her yellow dress bright against the dusty path, her heels clicking angrily with each step. Bayo stood frozen, the chill of her words seeping into his bones despite the Harmattan sun. He never saw the tears streaming down her face. He never saw how her shoulders shook with sobs once she was out of sight. He only heard the curse, echoing in his mind long after she had disappeared from view. That night, Bayo sat in his small off-campus room, staring at the wall without seeing it. He had called Adesua earlier, had told her that he had ended things with Funk, that he wanted to be with her fully and completely. Her joy had been palpable even through the phone line, and they had made plans to meet the next day. But the joy felt tainted now, shadowed by Funk's words. He was not a superstitious man. His education and his faith had taught him that curses had no power over those who did not believe in them. But the intensity of Funk's anger, the cold certainty in her voice, had shaken him more than he wanted to admit. He thought about the abortion she had mentioned. It was true early in their relationship, when they were both barely 20, Funk had become pregnant. They had been terrified, unprepared, still dependent on their parents for support. After weeks of agonizing, they had made the decision together to terminate the pregnancy. It had been her choice as much as his, but now, hearing her throw it back at him, he realized she had never truly forgiven him for it. She had carried that resentment for years, burying it beneath smiles and affection, waiting for the moment when it could be used as a weapon. The realization brought a new kind of sadness, not just for himself, but for Funk. What kind of person carries such bitterness for so long? What kind of love keeps a ledger of sacrifices, waiting for the moment to demand repayment? He thought about Adesua, about her gentle laugh and her warm eyes and the way she made him feel like the best version of himself. He thought about the future they had begun to sketch together: a small wedding, a modest home, children who would grow up surrounded by love and laughter. He thought about the school he dreamed of opening, and how Adesua had immediately started brainstorming ways to help, offering to handle the administrative side while he focused on teaching. That was the difference, he realized. With Funk, their conversations about the future had always been about what they would acquire: the house, the car, the status. With Adesua, their conversations were about what they would build: the family, the community, the legacy. He made a decision then. He would not let fear rule him. He would not let Funk's anger poison the beautiful thing that was growing between him and Adesua. He would love with his whole heart, build with his whole being, and trust that love was stronger than hate, that creation was more powerful than destruction. He picked up his phone and dialed Adesua's number. Bayo? Her voice was sleepy but happy. Is everything okay? Everything is perfect, he said, and he meant it. I just wanted to hear your voice. I just wanted to say that I love you, and that I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret loving me back. There was a pause, and when she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. I love you too, Bayo, and I don't need you to promise me perfection. Just promise me you'll always be honest with me. Promise me we'll face whatever comes together. I promise, he said. Together, always. Outside his window, the night was quiet and still. The Harmattan wind had died down, and the stars were visible for the first time in weeks, countless points of light scattered across the vast African sky. Bayo looked up at them and felt, for the first time since Funk's curse, a sense of peace. Whatever came, he would face it. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he would overcome them, because he was not alone anymore. He had Adesua, and with her by his side, he believed he could weather any storm. He did not know, could not know, how severe those storms would become. He did not know that Funk's curse would echo through the years, touching every corner of his life in ways he could never have imagined. He did not know that the child he and Adesua would create, the beautiful, resilient girl named Kemisola, would one day have to hide in a stranger's car to escape the very woman whose heart he had broken on this December night. All he knew was that he had made a choice, a difficult, painful, necessary choice, and whatever the future held, he would face it with the woman he loved by his side. He closed his eyes and slept, dreaming of honey-colored eyes and a laugh like music, unaware that the seeds of both his greatest joy and his deepest sorrow had just been planted, a new beginning. The wedding was meant to be small, just family, a few close friends, and the pastor who had counseled them through their engagement. But as word spread through both families that Bayo Adewale and Adesua Okafor were finally tying the knot, the small gathering swelled into something considerably larger. By the time the first Saturday in June arrived, the garden of the small church in Bodia was overflowing with guests. Folding chairs had been borrowed from 3 different churches in the neighborhood. Extra plastic tables were set up under a hastily erected canopy. The caterer, a family friend who usually handled parties of 50, at most, found herself cooking for nearly 200. Adesua's mother, Mama Grace Okafor, moved through the crowd like a general commanding her troops, her vibrant blue iro and buba flowing behind her as she directed cousins and nephews and family friends to their various posts. She had traveled from Enugu 3 days earlier, bringing with her 5 enormous Ghana must-go bags filled with food, fabrics, and the kind of maternal energy that could organize a small country. Bayo, she called out, spotting her soon-to-be son-in-law attempting to straighten his egbada in a corner. Come here, my son. Let me look at you. Bayo approached her with a mixture of affection and trepidation. Mama Grace had been nothing but kind to him since they met, but there was something in her eyes, a sharp intelligence that missed nothing, that made him want to always be on his best behavior. She adjusted his egbada, smoothed his cap, and stepped back to examine him. Her face softened into a smile. My daughter chose well, she declared loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. You are a handsome man, Bayo Adewale, but more importantly, you have kind eyes. I have looked at many men in my life, and I have learned that the eyes never lie. Thank you, Mama, Bayo said, his voice thick with emotion. I promise I will spend every day of my life making sure your daughter is happy. You will, Mama Grace said firmly. Not because you promise, but because I will be watching. From Enugu, I will be watching. She patted his cheek and moved off to harass someone else. In the small dressing room that served as the church's only restroom, Adesua was surrounded by her sisters and cousins, all of them fussing over her wedding gown. It was not the elaborate, expensive dress she had once dreamed of as a little girl. It was a simple white gown that Mama Grace had sewn with her own hands, using fabric bought from the Balagan market in Lagos. But to Adesua, it was the most beautiful dress in the world, because every stitch had been made with love. You're crying already? Her eldest sister, Gozi, exclaimed. The wedding hasn't even started. Adesua laughed through her tears. I can't help it. I just keep thinking about Papa, how much he would have loved to be here today. The room fell silent for a moment. Their father had been gone for 8 years now, but his absence was felt most acutely on days like this, days when a family gathered to celebrate, and his empty chair seemed to shout louder than any voice. He is here, Gozi said softly, wiping her own eyes. He is watching, and he is proud. You know how much he loved you, Sua. His last daughter, his baby. He would have walked you down that aisle with the biggest smile on his face. Adesua nodded, taking a deep breath. I know, I feel him. I feel them both, him and Mama's prayers. All these years, carrying me to this moment, a knock on the door announced that it was time. The church was small and humble, with wooden pews that creaked when anyone sat down and a ceiling fan that whirred noisily without actually cooling anyone beneath it. But it was filled with something far more valuable than air conditioning. It was filled with love. Bayo stood at the altar, his heart pounding so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. Beside him stood his best man, his cousin Emeka, who kept muttering encouragement under his breath. Behind him sat his parents, his father, Pa Adewale, a retired civil servant who had traveled from Ondo with his wife, both of them beaming with pride. The music changed, and everyone stood. Adesua appeared at the back of the church on the arm of her oldest brother, Chuka. She walked slowly, deliberately, her eyes fixed on Bayo as if he were the only person in the room. The simple white gown moved gracefully around her, and the small bouquet of white roses she carried trembled slightly in her hands. Bayo forgot to breathe. She was beautiful, more beautiful than he had ever seen her. But it wasn't just her appearance that moved him. It was the expression on her face, the look of pure, unguarded love that she was giving him as she walked down that aisle. In that moment, he understood something profound. This woman was choosing him, not because she had to. Not because of circumstance or obligation, but because she wanted to. She was walking toward him with her whole heart, and he knew, with a certainty that went beyond logic or reason, that he would spend the rest of his life being worthy of that choice. When she finally reached him and placed her hand in his, he felt a peace settle over him that he had never known before. "You're crying," she whispered, a smile playing at her lips. "So are you," he whispered back. The pastor cleared his throat pointedly, and they both turned to face him, still holding hands, still smiling. The ceremony was simple but profound. They exchanged vows. They had written themselves promises of love and faithfulness, of patience and forgiveness, of building a life together that would honor God and bless others. They exchanged rings that cost more than Bayo's monthly salary but felt worth every kobo. And when the pastor pronounced them husband and wife and told Bayo he could kiss his bride, the small church erupted in cheers that probably could be heard all the way to the university. The reception was held in the church garden, under the canopy that had been erected that morning. The caterer had outdone herself. There was jollof rice in quantities that seemed impossible, fried rice with vegetables, moin moin wrapped in leaves, fried plantains golden and sweet, and enough meat to feed a small army. For dessert there were small chops, samosa, puff puff, spring rolls, and a wedding cake that Mama Grace had somehow managed to bake and transport from Enugu without incident. Bayo and Adesua sat at the high table, barely touching their food because they were too busy talking to everyone who came to greet them. Friend after friend, relative after relative, all offering blessings and advice and warnings in equal measure. "Marriage is not easy," one elderly uncle declared loudly. "But if you love each other, you will survive. Love is the engine, but patience is the fuel. Don't forget that, children." Another relative called out, "Don't wait too long for children. Your parents want to see grandchildren before they die." Adesua blushed. Bayo laughed and promised they would do their best. When the formalities were over and the DJ started playing music, Bayo led his new wife to the makeshift dance floor. They moved together slowly, ignoring the faster beat the DJ had chosen, lost in their own world. "Are you happy?" Bayo asked, his lips close to her ear. Adesua pulled back to look at him, her eyes shining. "I'm the happiest I've ever been in my entire life. Are you?" He thought about it, really thought about it. He thought about the years of searching, of wondering if he would ever find someone who truly understood him. He thought about the pain of ending things with Funk, the guilt that still occasionally surfaced. He thought about the curse she had pronounced, the words that still echoed in his mind on quiet nights. But then he looked at Adesua, really looked at her, and all of that faded away. "I'm happier than I ever thought I could be," he said. "You are the best thing that has ever happened to me." She smiled that beautiful smile, and they continued dancing, oblivious to the world around them. The first months of marriage were a revelation to Bayo. He had lived with Funk in the sense of spending most of his time with her, but living with Adesua was completely different. They shared a small one-bedroom apartment in Bodia, just a living room, a bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom that flooded every time someone showered. But to them, it was a palace. Adesua had a gift for making even the simplest moments feel special. She would wake up at a.m. every morning to prepare Bayo's lunch before he left for his teaching job at the local secondary school. Not just any lunch, she would pack his food with care, adding little notes sometimes, or including an extra piece of fruit because she knew he loved oranges. In the evenings, she would have dinner ready when he came home, and they would eat together on their small balcony, watching the neighborhood come alive with the sounds of children playing and mothers calling them home. On weekends, they explored Ibadan together. They visited the University of Ibadan Zoo, where Adesua squealed with delight at the monkeys and refused to go near the snakes. They climbed the hills at Bowers Tower, holding hands as they looked out over the sprawling city below. They went to the market together on Sundays, bargaining for vegetables and meat, learning to stretch Bayo's modest salary to cover their needs. They talked constantly about everything and nothing, about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears, about the school Bayo dreamed of opening someday, a place where poor children could get a quality education regardless of their background, about the children Adesua hoped to have, at least 3, she said, so they could grow up with the kind of sibling bonds she cherished. "Your eyes light up when you talk about children," Bayo observed one evening as they lay in bed, the ceiling fan whirring overhead. Adesua smiled. "I've always wanted to be a mother, ever since I was little, playing with my dolls. I used to name them and sing to them and pretend they were my babies." "You'll be an amazing mother," Bayo said, pulling her closer. "The kind of mother who makes her children feel loved and safe and special, and you'll be an amazing father," she replied. "The kind of father who shows up for everything and makes his children feel proud." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, dreaming of the family they would build together. But the shadow of the past was never far away. Funk's calls had started again within weeks of the wedding. At first, they were just occasional, a missed call here, a hang-up there. Bayo tried to ignore them, telling himself it was just coincidence, that Funk had moved on with her life. But the calls became more frequent, more persistent, and when Bayo finally answered one evening, Funk's voice sliced through the peaceful atmosphere of their home like a knife. I hope you're enjoying your little marriage, Bayo. Enjoy it while it lasts. Funk, please. Don't funk please me. You threw me away like garbage for that woman. You think I've forgotten? You think I've moved on? I haven't moved on, Bayo. I will never move on. Not until you pay for what you did to me. I'm sorry you're still hurting, Bayo said, trying to keep his voice calm. But we need to move forward with our lives. I wish you well, Funk. I truly do. But you need to stop calling. I will stop calling when I'm ready to stop calling, and I'm not ready. I may never be ready. Every time I think about what you did, every time I think about that woman sleeping in my bed, living my life, she's not living your life. She's living her own life. Our life, you need to let go, Funk, for your own sake. There was a long pause, and when Funk spoke again, her voice was quieter but somehow more terrifying. I will never let go, Bayo. I will carry this with me forever. And one day you will understand what you've done. One day you will feel even a fraction of the pain I feel. And on that day I will be watching, and I will be happy. The line went dead. Bayo stood in the living room, the phone still pressed to his ear, his heart pounding. He didn't hear Adesua come up behind him until she wrapped her arms around his waist. Funk? She asked softly. He nodded, not trusting his voice. She turned him around to face her, her eyes searching his. Tell me about it. Don't carry this burden alone. We're married now, Bayo. Your problems are my problems. Your pain is my pain. And so he told her everything about the 5 years with Funk, about the abortion she had undergone, about the curse she had pronounced on their wedding day, about the calls that had continued even after the wedding. He held nothing back, watching her face for signs of judgment or fear. But Adesua only listened, her hand held firmly in his. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Pity her, she finally said. Bayo stared at her. Pity her. After everything she said? After the curses? Think about it, Bayo. A person who carries that much anger, that much bitterness, can she be happy? Can she know peace? She's trapped in her own prison, and the key is forgiveness, but she refuses to use it. That's not strength, that's the deepest kind of weakness. She cupped his face in her hands. We will pray for her. Every day, we will pray that God heals her heart and frees her from this bitterness. And we will live our lives so fully, so joyfully, that her curses will have no power over us. Because love is stronger than hate, Bayo. It always has been, and it always will be. Bayo felt. Tears prick his eyes. In that moment, he loved her more than he had ever loved anyone or anything. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Maybe not, she said with a gentle smile. But you have me anyway, and I'm not going anywhere. Weeks turned in 2 months, and life continued its gentle rhythm. The calls from Funk became less frequent but never stopped entirely. Bayo learned to recognize her number and let the calls go to voicemail. Adesua, true to her word, prayed for her every night before sleep. And then, one evening in their 9th month of marriage, Adesua met him at the door with a look on her face that he couldn't quite read. Is everything okay? He asked, immediately concerned. She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. Everything is more than okay. We're going to have a baby. For a moment, Bayo couldn't speak. He looked at her stomach, then at her face, then back at her stomach, as if trying to verify the information through sheer visual inspection. A baby? He finally managed. We're going to have a baby? Adesua laughed, that beautiful laugh that still made his heart skip. Yes, Bayo, we're going to have a baby. You're going to be a father. He lifted her off her feet and spun her around the living room, laughing and crying at the same time. A father. I'm going to be a father. We're going to be parents. When he finally set her down, they stood in the middle of the room, holding each other, both of them weeping with joy. What will we name her? Adesua asked. Her? You think it's a girl? I hope it's a girl. A little girl with your eyes and my stubbornness. Bayo laughed. God help us if she has your stubbornness and your terrible dancing. My dancing is not terrible. It's terrible, Bayo, but I love you anyway. He kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips. If it's a girl, we'll name her Kemisola. It means God has made me whole, because that's what you've done, Adesua. You've made me whole. Adesua smiled through her tears. Kemisola Adewale. It's perfect, that night, as they lay in bed with Bayo's hand resting protectively. On her still flat stomach, Adesua fell asleep to the sound of her husband's whispered prayers, prayers of thanksgiving, prayers of protection, prayers for the tiny life growing inside her. And in the darkness, for the first time since Funk's curse, Bayo allowed himself to believe that everything would be okay, that love really was stronger than hate, that the future stretching out before them was bright with promise. He did not know that Funk's calls had increased again in recent weeks. He did not know that she had started showing up at his workplace, demanding to see him, causing scenes that embarrassed him in front of colleagues. He did not know that she had begun visiting his mother in Ondo, pretending to be a concerned friend, gathering information about his life. All he knew was that his wife was pregnant, that his child would soon be born, and that for the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to be truly, completely happy. It would not last, but for that one night, in that small apartment in Bodia, with his wife sleeping peacefully beside him and his unborn child growing safely within her, Bayo Adewale was at peace. The cry that filled the delivery room on that humid Thursday night in August was unlike any sound Bayo had ever heard. It was high-pitched and insistent, full of life and demand, and it pierced through the anxious waiting and hours of labor like a ray of sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "Is that her?" Bayo asked, his voice cracking with emotion. "Is that our baby?" The nurse, a plump woman with a kind face, smiled as she cleaned the squalling infant. "It's a girl, Dad. A beautiful, healthy girl. Congratulations." Bayo turned to Adesua, who lay exhausted but beaming on the delivery bed. Her face was slick with sweat, her hair plastered to her forehead, and she had never looked more beautiful to him. "We did it," she whispered, reaching for his hand. "We made a person, Bayo. A whole person." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips, tears streaming down his face. "You did it. You were amazing. I love you so much." The nurse placed the baby in Adesua's arms, and both parents fell silent, gazing at the tiny creature who had just entered their lives. She had stopped crying now and was looking around with wide, curious eyes that were unmistakably her mother's, large and dark and full of wonder. "She has your eyes," Bayo breathed, "and your stubborn chin," Adesua observed. "Look at that little chin, all determined already." They laughed together, the exhausted, joyful laughter of new parents. Outside, the rain that had been pouring down all evening was beginning to ease, as if the heavens themselves were taking a bow after providing the soundtrack for this momentous occasion. "Kemisola," Adesua said softly, testing the name on her lips. "Kemisola Adewale. Welcome to the world, my precious girl." The baby Kemi blinked once, twice, and then fell asleep, exhausted from her journey into the world. The days that followed were a blur of joy and exhaustion. Adesua's mother, Mama Grace, arrived from Enugu within a week, armed with more Ghana must-go bags and a determination to ensure her daughter and granddaughter were properly cared for. She took over the kitchen, producing pots of pepper soup and other traditional postpartum foods that she insisted Adesua eat to regain her strength. "You must eat, my daughter," she would say, appearing at the bedside with yet another bowl. "How will you produce milk for this baby if you don't eat? In my time, we didn't have this nonsense of worrying about weight. We ate to feed our children." Bayo, for his part, threw himself into fatherhood with an enthusiasm that sometimes bordered on comical. He changed diapers with the concentration of a surgeon performing a delicate operation. He woke at all hours to comfort Kemi when she cried, walking her around the small apartment and singing old nursery rhymes his mother had sung. To him, he read parenting books borrowed from the school library and took notes on feeding schedules, developmental milestones, and baby massage techniques. "You're going to wear yourself out," Adesua told him one night, watching as he gently rocked Kemi back to sleep at a.m. "You have work in the morning." "I can sleep when I'm dead," he whispered back. "Right now, my daughter needs me." Adesua smiled and closed her eyes, secure in the knowledge that her child had the most devoted father in the world. As the weeks turned into months, Kemi grew and flourished. She was an easy baby, content to watch the world with those big, curious eyes, only crying when she was hungry or uncomfortable. She hit every milestone early, smiling at 6 weeks, rolling over at 4 months, sitting up at 6 months, crawling at 8, by her first birthday. She was already taking tentative steps, holding on to furniture with one hand while reaching for toys with the other. The small apartment on Bodia was suddenly too small for her explorations, and Bayo began talking about finding a bigger place. "She needs space to run," he said one evening, watching Kemi practice her walking between the sofa and the coffee table. "A yard where she can play. Somewhere safe." Adesua nodded, though worry flickered in her eyes. "Can we afford it?" "A house with a yard will cost more." "We'll manage," Bayo said confidently. "I just got that promotion to senior teacher, remember? And you're doing so well at the secretary job. We can afford a little more, and Kemi is worth it." So they began the search, and by the time Kemi was 18 months old, they had founded a proper family home on Adamola Street. It was a 3-bedroom bungalow with a small but genuine backyard, a living room large enough for Kemi to run in circles, and a kitchen that made Adesua gasp with delight when she first saw it. "This is really ours?" she asked, standing in the empty living room on the day they got the keys. "We really own this?" "We really do," Bayo confirmed, wrapping his arms around her. "Well, the bank owns most of it, but we own the part that matters, the part where we'll make memories." Kemi, now walking confidently, toddled through the empty rooms, her footsteps echoing on the bare floors. She discovered the backyard and immediately sat down in the grass, patting it with delight. "She loves it," Adesua observed. "Look at her. She's already claimed the yard." Bayo laughed. our little princess, surveying her domain. They moved in the following weekend, with help from Bayo's colleagues and Adisua's church group. By Sunday evening, they were settled, furniture arranged, kitchen stocked, Kemi's room decorated with colorful murals that Bayo had painted himself, his secret artistic talent finally put to good use. That night, as they sat on their new porch watching the stars appear in the sky, Adesua leaned against Bayo's shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For everything. For this house. For our daughter. For making me the happiest woman in the world." He kissed her hair. "You gave me a family, Adesua. You gave me purpose. I should be thanking you." Inside, Kemi slept peacefully in her new room, dreaming whatever dreams occupy the mind of an 18-month-old. The house on Adamola Street was already beginning to feel like home. The years that followed were the happiest of Bayo's life. Kemi grew from a toddler into a preschooler, her personality emerging with each passing month. She was curious, asking endless questions about everything she saw. "Daddy, why is the sky blue? Daddy, where do birds sleep? Daddy, why does Mama's food taste better than yours?" Bayo pretended to be offended by that last one, but even he had to admit that Adesua was the superior cook. She was kind too. When the neighbor's child fell and scraped his knee, 3-year-old Kemi ran inside, grabbed her favorite bandage, the one with cartoon characters on it, and carefully applied it to his boo-boo. When Bayo came home tired from work, she would pat his arm and say, "Poor daddy, rough day," in exactly the tone Adesua used with her when she was upset. And she was joyful. Her laughter filled the house on Adamola Street like music, spilling out of windows and doors and infecting everyone who heard it. She danced to music only she could hear, sang songs she made up on the spot, and greeted each day as an adventure waiting to unfold. Bayo treasured every moment. He made a point of being home for dinner every night, no matter how pressing the demands of his job. He took Kemi to the park on Saturdays, pushing her on swings and catching her at the bottom of slides. He read to her every night before bed, doing different voices for different characters, making her giggle with his theatrical performances. Adesua, for her part, thrived as a mother. She balanced her job as a secretary with caring for Kemi, and she did it with the same gentle smile that had captured Bayo's heart years ago. She taught Kemi her first prayers, her first songs, her first lessons about kindness and sharing. She braided Kemi's hair with infinite patience even. When Kemi squirmed and complained, she cooked Kemi's favorite foods, jollof rice with extra vegetables, fried plantains, bean cakes that Kemi called Mama's special balls. They were a team, the three of them, a family. When Kemi was 3.5, Bayo came home one evening to find Adesua sitting on the porch, her face thoughtful. "Everything okay?" he asked, sitting beside her. She nodded slowly. "I've been thinking." "About what?" "About giving Kemi a sibling." Bayo's eyebrows rose. "A sibling? A brother or sister? Someone to grow up with, someone to play with, fight with, love." "I grew up with 5 siblings, Bayo. I can't imagine being an only child. It's lonely." Bayo considered this. He himself had grown up as an only child, and while his parents had done their best, he remembered the loneliness, the longing for someone to share his world with. "You think you have enough love for another one?" he asked teasingly. Adesua's face lit up with that beautiful smile. "Are you kidding? My heart is so full it might burst. I want to fill this house with even more laughter. I want Kemi to have what I had, siblings who will be there for her long after we're gone." That night, they talked seriously about the timing, the finances, the logistics. Bayo had been promoted to vice principal at his school, and Adesua's secretarial job was stable. They could afford another child. And more importantly, they wanted another child. "We should start trying," Adesua said finally. "Soon, while Kemi is still young enough to adjust easily." Bayo took her hand. "Then let's start trying." By the time Kemi was 4, Adesua was pregnant again. They told Kemi in the simplest terms possible that Mama had a baby growing in her tummy, that soon Kemi would have a little brother or sister to play with. Kemi's reaction was pure, unfiltered delight. "A baby? In your tummy? Can I see it? Can I talk to it? Does it have a name yet? Can I name it? I want to name it Chidi if it's a boy and If it's a girl. Those are good names, right, Mama? Right, Daddy?" Adesua laughed and pulled Kemi onto her lap. "You can talk to the baby, yes, but you have to be gentle. And you have to wait until the baby is born to find out if it's a boy or a girl." Kemi immediately pressed her small face against her mother's still flat stomach. "Hello, baby," she whispered loudly. "This is your big sister, Kemi. I'm going to teach you everything. I'm going to show you how to play and how to eat and how to be good. You're going to love me, okay? I'm the best big sister in the whole world." Bayo and Adesua exchanged looks of pure love over their daughter's head. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Adesua had regular checkups at the clinic, and each time the doctor pronounced everything healthy and normal. Kemi accompanied her mother to some appointments, fascinated by the ultrasound images that showed the growing baby. That's its head, the doctor would explain, pointing. And those are its arms and legs. Kemi would stare at the grainy images with wonder. It's so small, Mama. How does it fit in your tummy? It's cozy in there, Adesua would explain, like being wrapped in the warmest, softest blanket. In the evenings, Kemi would press her ear to her mother's growing belly and giggle when she felt the baby kick. Mama, the baby is playing football inside you. I felt it. I really felt it. Adesua would laugh that beautiful laugh and stroke Kemi's hair. Yes, my love. Your brother or sister can't wait to meet you. The due date was approaching when Adesua began to feel unwell. At first, it was just fatigue more than the normal pregnancy tiredness. Then came swelling in her ankles, then headaches that wouldn't go away. You should see the doctor, Bayo urged one evening, watching her rub her temples with a pained expression. It's nothing, she insisted. Just pregnancy things. The doctor said everything was fine at the last checkup. But the symptoms persisted, and Bayo finally put his foot down. I'm taking you to the hospital tomorrow, for a proper check. No arguments, Adesua sighed but agreed. You worry too much. I love you too much not to worry. The next day, Bayo took leave from work and drove Adesua to the hospital. The doctor examined her, ran some tests, and returned with a concerned expression. Your blood pressure is quite high, he explained, and there's protein in your urine. These are signs of preeclampsia. It can be serious if not managed properly, Adesua's hand tightened on Bayo's. What does that mean? For the baby? It means we need to monitor you closely. I'm going to admit you for observation. We want to keep that blood pressure under control and make sure both you and the baby stay healthy. Adesua was admitted that afternoon. Kemi stayed with Mama Nkechi, their neighbor, who was happy to look after her. Bayo divided his time between the hospital and home, bringing Adesua things from the house, sitting with her for hours, holding her hand and praying. For a few days, things seemed stable. Adesua's blood pressure responded to medication. The baby's heartbeat was strong and steady. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. Then, in the early hours of a Tuesday morning, everything changed. Bayo was asleep in the chair beside Adesua's bed when the monitors started beeping urgently. He jerked awake to find nurses rushing into the room, their faces tense with urgency. What's happening? He demanded. What's wrong with my wife? Her blood pressure is spiking, one nurse said. We need to deliver the baby now. Emergency C-section. Before Bayo could process what was happening, Adesua was being wheeled out of the room on a gurney. He ran after her, grabbing her hand. Adesua, Adesua, look at me. Her eyes fluttered open and she smiled weakly. It's okay, Bayo. Everything will be okay. I love you, he said desperately. I love you so much. I love you too. Take care of our babies, both of them. And then they took her away, and Bayo was left standing in the corridor, alone with his fear. The hours that followed were the longest of Bayo's life. He paced the hospital corridor, his heart pounding, his prayers becoming more desperate with each passing minute. He called his mother, called Adesua's mother, called everyone he could think to call, asking them to pray. When the doctor finally emerged, his face told the story before his words could. Mr. Adewale, I'm so sorry. Bayo's legs gave way. He grabbed the wall to steady himself. What? What happened? Your wife. She had a severe reaction to the anesthesia. Her blood pressure crashed, and we couldn't bring it back up. We did everything we could, but she lost too much blood. I'm so sorry. We lost her. The words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. Adesua? Lost? She had been smiling at him just hours ago. She had told him everything would be okay. And the baby? Bayo heard himself ask, his voice sounding far away. The doctor's face crumpled further. The umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck. He was deprived of oxygen for too long. We tried to resuscitate, but I'm so sorry, Mr. Adewale. We lost them both. The world stopped. Bayo heard a sound, a raw, primal howl, and it took him a moment to realize it was coming from his own throat. He sank to the hospital floor, his body folding in on itself, as the full weight of what had just happened crushed him. Adesua was gone. His beautiful, gentle, loving wife was gone. The baby was gone. The son he had dreamed of, the sibling Kemi had talked to through her mother's belly, was gone. Everything was gone. The days that followed were a blur of grief and numbness. Mama Grace arrived from Enugu, her own grief vast but her strength somehow holding them all together. Adesua's sisters came. Bayo's parents came. The house on Adamola Street filled with people cooking, cleaning, organizing, doing all the things that needed to be done while Bayo sat in a corner of the living room, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to do anything but exist in the terrible space where his wife used to be. The funeral was held on a Saturday. The church was packed. Adesua had touched so many lives with her kindness, her gentleness, her radiant spirit. Bayo sat in the front row, Kemi on his lap, unable to cry anymore because he had no tears left. Kemi, only 4 years old, didn't fully understand what was happening. She knew her mother was gone. She knew the baby was gone, but the permanence of death was beyond her young comprehension. "Mama is sleeping?" she asked during the service, looking up at Bayo with those eyes that were so like Adesua's. "When will she wake up?" Soon, Bayo lied, because he couldn't bear to tell her the truth. Soon, but Mama Grace, sitting on his other side, heard the exchange. After the service, she took Bayo aside. "You must tell her the truth," she said gently. "Not now, she's too young to understand. But soon, she needs to know that her mother is not coming back. Children can handle more than we think, Bayo. But they cannot handle being lied to." Bayo nodded, though the thought of having that conversation with his daughter made him want to die. In the weeks after the funeral, Bayo went through the motions of living. He fed himself when he remembered. He went back to work because the school depended on him and because sitting in the empty house was unbearable. He took care of Kemi because she was all he had left. But inside, he was hollow. The house on Adamula Street once filled with laughter and love, had become a mausoleum of memories. Every corner held a ghost Adesua in the kitchen, Adesua in the garden, Adesua reading to Kemi in the living room. He couldn't escape her, and he didn't want to. At night, when Kemi was asleep, he would sit on the porch and stare at the stars, wondering which one was Adesua, wondering if she could see him, wondering if she was disappointed in the broken shell of a man he had become. He thought about the curse. Funk's curse, pronounced on the day he had ended their relationship. "You will never hear the cry of a baby in your home and be happy." He had heard Kemi's cry, had been happier than he ever thought possible. But now the house was silent, and Adesua was gone, and the baby was gone, and he was alone with his grief and his guilt. Had the curse worked? Was this punishment for what he had done to Funk? For choosing Adesua over her? He knew rationally that this was not how the world worked. Curses didn't kill people. Complications in childbirth killed people. But in the dark hours of the night, rationality had no power. Only the grief remained, and the guilt, and the endless, aching loneliness. And then Funk reappeared. It started with a phone call, just a few weeks after the funeral. Bayo was sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, when his phone rang. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Bayo?" The voice was soft, sympathetic. "It's Funk. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry." Bayo was too numb to be angry, too exhausted to hang up. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I know we have history," Funk continued. "I know things ended badly between us. But when I heard about Adesua, about the baby, I couldn't just stay silent. I wanted you to know that I'm here for you. If you need anything, someone to talk to, someone to help with the house, someone to watch Kemi, I'm just a phone call away." Bayo should have been suspicious. He should have remembered the years of harassment, the curses, the threats. But grief had weakened his defenses, and loneliness had made him vulnerable. "Thank you," he said again. "I appreciate that." They talked for a few more minutes about nothing, really, just small talk, and then Funk said goodbye, and hung up. Over the following weeks, the calls continued. Funk would check in regularly, always sympathetic, always offering help. And then she started showing up first with food she had cooked, then offering to clean the house, then offering to watch Kemi while Bayo ran errands. Bayo found himself accepting. It was easier than doing everything himself. It was easier than facing the empty house alone. And Kemi was struggling too. She needed a mother figure, didn't she? Someone to fill that void? He ignored the voice in the back of his mind that whispered warnings. He ignored the memory of Funk's face as she pronounced her curse. He was too tired, too broken, too desperate for any kind of comfort to question why it was being offered. And Funk, watching him slowly lower his defenses, smiled inwardly and waited for her moment. The widower's weakness. The harmattan had returned to Ibadan, bringing with it the familiar dust that coated everything in a fine brown powder. But to Bayo, the world had been colorless since the day Adesua died. The harmattan's haze only matched the fog that had settled over his soul. 6 months had passed since the funeral. 6 months of waking up each morning and remembering all over again that she was gone. 6 months of going through the motions, teaching his classes, attending meetings, coming home to a house that no longer felt like home. 6 months of watching Kemi grow and change and slowly stop asking. When Mama was coming back, that had been the hardest part, when Kemi stopped asking. For the first few weeks after the funeral, she had asked every day, "Daddy, where is Mama? Daddy, when is Mama coming home? Daddy, does Mama miss us?" And Bayo, lacking the courage to tell her the truth, had given her evasive answers. "Soon, my love, soon." But children are not fools. They feel the absence of a parent like a physical wound, and they learn in their own way to accept what adults cannot bring themselves to say. By the 3rd month, Kemi had stopped asking. She would sometimes sit in her mother's favorite chair or hold one of her mother's scarves to her face, inhaling the fading scent. But she no longer asked when Mama was coming back. That silence, more than anything else, broke Bayo's heart. The house on Adamala Street had become unbearable. Every room held memories. The kitchen, where Adesua had cooked with such love. The living room, where they had sat together in the evenings, watching TV or just talking. The bedroom, where they had held each other and dreamed of the future. And Kemi's room, with the murals Bayo had. Painted murals that Adesua had praised and admired. He couldn't escape her. He didn't want to escape her. But being surrounded by her ghost while trying to raise their daughter alone was slowly destroying him. The school had been understanding, giving him as much time off as he needed. But eventually he had to return. The students needed him. The other teachers needed him. And honestly, being at work was easier than being at home. At work, he could pretend to be normal. At work, he could focus on something other than his grief. But at night, when he came home to the empty house, the grief would crash over him like a wave, and he would drown all over again. Funk's first visit was unexpected. She appeared at his door on a Saturday afternoon, carrying a large pot wrapped in a colorful cloth. When Bayo opened the door, he barely recognized her at first. She had changed, cut her hair shorter, dressed more modestly. Her face, which he remembered as sharp and sometimes hard, seemed softer now. "Bayo," she said gently, "I hope you don't mind me coming by. I made too much food, you know how I am with cooking, and I thought you and Kemi might appreciate a home-cooked meal." Bayo stood in the doorway, frozen by confusion. This was the woman who had cursed his marriage. This was the woman who had harassed him for years. And yet here she was, offering food, looking at him with what appeared to be genuine concern. "I thank you," he managed finally, stepping aside to let her in. Funk walked into the living room, looking around with an expression of sadness. "The house looks good," she said. "I know it must be hard, maintaining everything on your own." Bayo nodded, not trusting his voice. She set the pot on the dining table and uncovered it. The aroma that filled the room was incredible: jollof rice, fried plantains, stewed meat. It smelled like home, like the meals Adesua used to cook. "I should go," Funk said, turning to leave. "I don't want to impose, but please, eat, both of you, and if you need anything at all, you have my number." She was at the door when Kemi appeared, drawn by the smell of food. The 4-year-old looked up at the stranger with curiosity. "Who are you?" Kemi asked. Funk knelt down to Kemi's level, her face soft. "I'm an old friend of your daddy's, sweetheart. I just brought some food for you and your father. I hope you like it." Kemi studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Thank you, Ma." Funk smiled a genuine smile, it seemed, and left. That night, Bayo and Kemi ate the best meal they'd had in months. Kemi asked for seconds, then thirds. Watching his daughter eat with such enjoyment, Bayo felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. A tiny flicker of gratitude. The visits continued. At first, they were sporadic, once a week, then twice. Funk would bring food, or offer to help with cleaning, or simply sit and talk with Bayo about nothing in particular. She never pushed, never asked for anything in return. She was simply present. Gradually, Bayo found himself looking forward to her visits. She was a connection. To the outside world, to a life before grief had swallowed him whole. She listened without judgment when he talked about Adesua, about the baby, about the guilt that ate at him. She didn't offer platitudes or easy answers. She just listened. "You couldn't have done anything differently," she told him one evening, when he had been particularly consumed by guilt. "You took her to the hospital. You were there with her. You did everything right, Bayo. Sometimes life just happens. It's not anyone's fault." He wanted to believe her. He wanted to let go of the guilt that had become his constant companion. But it wasn't that easy. Funk also helped with Kemi, and that was perhaps the most valuable thing she offered. Kemi, who had been so quiet since her mother's death, slowly began to open up around Funk. They would sit together and draw, or Funk would read to her, or they would simply talk, Kemi chattering about her day, Funk listening with apparent interest. "She's a wonderful child," Funk observed one day after Kemi had gone to bed. "So bright, so curious. She reminds me of you, actually. The way you were in university, always asking questions, always wanting to understand everything." Bayo smiled a real smile, the first in a long time. "She's like her mother, too." Adesua was curious about everything. She could spend hours just watching people, wondering about their stories. Funk's expression flickered for just a moment at the mention of Adesua's name, but she quickly covered it. "You must miss her terribly." Every second of every day, Mama Nkechi, the neighbor who had always been kind to the family, watched these developments with growing concern. One afternoon, she caught Bayo as he was coming home from work. "Bayo, my son," she said, drawing him aside. "I need to speak with you." "Yes, Mama Nkechi?" "That woman who has been coming around." "Funk. I remember her from before. She was at your wedding, wasn't she?" Looking at your wife with eyes that could kill? Bayo stiffened. She's changed, Mama Nkechi. Grief changes people. She's been nothing but kind to us. Mama Nkechi shook her head slowly. I have lived on this street for 20 years, Bayo. I have seen many things, and I have learned that people do not change that much, that quickly. Be careful, my son. For your sake and for that innocent child's sake. Bayo wanted to argue, to defend Funk, to explain that she had been a lifeline in his darkest hours. But something in Mama Nkechi's eyes made him pause. I'll be careful, he promised. But he wasn't. He couldn't be. He was too desperate, too lonely, too broken to be careful. The night it happened was 6 months after Adesuwa's death. Funk had stayed late, helping Bayo organize some of Adesuwa's things. It was a task he had been avoiding for months, unable to face the pain of sorting through her belongings. But Funk had gently insisted. You can't live in a museum, Bayo, she had said. Keeping everything exactly as she left it, that's not honoring her. That's torturing yourself. Let me help you pack some things away. You can keep what's most precious, but the rest you need to let go. So they had gone through Adesuwa's clothes, her books, her personal items. Each item brought a fresh wave of grief, and by the time they finished, Bayo was exhausted emotionally, physically, spiritually. They sat in the living room, the packed boxes around them, the house silent except for the sound of Kemi's soft breathing from her bedroom. Thank you, Bayo said, his voice rough. I couldn't have done that alone. Funk moved closer, placing a hand on his arm. You don't have to do anything alone, Bayo. I'm here. I've always been here. He looked at her, then really looked at her, and for a moment, he saw not the woman who had cursed him, but someone who cared, someone who was present, someone who filled the aching emptiness even just a little. I miss her so much, he confessed, tears streaming down his face. I don't know how to go on without her. Funk pulled him into an embrace, and he let himself be held. It had been so long since anyone had held him. So long since he had felt human contact that wasn't a handshake or a pat on the back. You go on one day at a time, she whispered. And you let the people who care about you help you carry the burden. He didn't know who moved first. He didn't know how it happened. All he knew was that one moment they were sitting on the couch, and the next they were in his bedroom, and then, by morning when he woke and saw her, sleeping beside him, shame washed over him like cold water. What had he done? How could he have been so weak? Adesuwa had been gone only 6 months, and already he had betrayed her memory with the very woman who had cursed their marriage. He slipped out of bed and went to the bathroom, where he stood under the shower for a long time, letting the water pound against his skin, trying to wash away the guilt that coated him like oil. When he emerged, Funk was dressed and making tea in the kitchen. Good morning, she said calmly, as if nothing had happened. I made you tea. You look like you need it. Bayo couldn't meet her eyes. Funk, about last night, it's okay, Bayo. Her voice was gentle, understanding. We're both adults. We both have needs. Don't overthink it. But he did overthink it. He overthought it every day for the following weeks, as Funk continued to visit, as they continued to spend time together, as the line between friendship and something more became increasingly blurred. He told himself it was just physical. He told himself he was lonely. He told himself that Funk had changed, that the bitterness and anger of the past were gone. He told himself many things, but deep down, in the place where truth lived, he knew he was making a terrible mistake. Within 3 months of that first night, Funk had moved into the house on Adamula Street. It happened gradually, almost imperceptibly. First, she started leaving a few things, a toothbrush, some clothes, books she was reading. Then she started spending nights more often than not. Then one day, Bayo came home from work to find that she had rearranged the living room, moved some of Adesuwa's things into storage, and hung her own artwork on the walls. I hope you don't mind, she said, watching his face carefully. The house just felt so sad. I thought a few changes might make it feel more like a home again. Bayo looked around. The room was brighter, certainly. The heavy drapes Adesuwa had loved were gone, replaced by lighter curtains. Some of the family photos had been moved, replaced by generic art prints. It looked nice. It looked different. It looks nice, he said, because he didn't know what else to say. Funk smiled. I'm glad. You like it. That night, as they lay in bed, Funk brought up a new topic. Bayo, I've been thinking about us. He tends beside her. What about us? We've been together for months now. Living together, sharing a life. Don't you think it's time we made it official? I could move my things in properly. We could tell people we're together. It would be better for Kemi, too, having a stable home with 2 parents. Bayo was silent for a long moment. A stable home with 2 parents. Wasn't that what he wanted for Kemi? Wasn't that what Adesuwa would have wanted? I don't know, Funk. It feels fast. Fast? Bayo, we've known each other for nearly a decade. We dated for 5 years before things ended. This isn't fast. This is picking up where we left off. He wanted to argue, but he couldn't find the words. And in his weakness, in his loneliness, in his desperate need for someone to share the burden of raising his daughter, he gave in. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay." The transformation was gradual but unmistakable. To the outside world, Funk presented herself as the perfect partner. She accompanied Bayo to school events, charming his colleagues with her warmth and apparent dedication to him and Kemi. She joined the church women's fellowship, volunteering for committees and always having a kind word for everyone. She cooked for neighbors who were sick, donated to local charities, and cultivated an image of saintly benevolence. In front of Bayo, she was the perfect stepmother to Kemi. "Kemi, darling, come and let me braid your hair," she would coo, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "You look so beautiful today. Your father is so lucky to have such a lovely daughter." Bayo would watch these interactions with relief, believing that somehow, miraculously, Funk had changed, that the bitterness and anger of the past had been washed away by time and tragedy. What he didn't see was what happened when he wasn't there. The first time Funk hurt Kemi, it was almost accidental. Kemi had spilled juice on the living room carpet, an accident, the kind of thing any child might do. Funk was cleaning it up when Bayo called from work to say he would be late. When she hung up the phone, her face changed. "You stupid child," she hissed, grabbing Kemi's arm. "Look what you've done. Do you know how hard it is to get stains out of this carpet?" Kemi's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Mama Funk. I didn't mean to." "Don't call me Mama." Funk's grip tightened, her nails digging into Kemi's thin arm. "I am not your mother. Your mother is dead, remember? She died because of you." Kemi didn't understand the cruelty of these words, but she felt their weight. She felt the confusion of a child who doesn't know why the person who smiles at her father hates her so much. Funk released her arm with a shove. "Go to your room. No dinner tonight. Maybe that will teach you to be more careful." Kemi ran to her room, sobbing, and Funk returned to cleaning the carpet, her expression calm once more. When Bayo came home that night, he found Kemi already in bed and Funk preparing dinner. "How was your day?" he asked, kissing her cheek. "Busy," she said with a smile. Kemi spilled juice on the carpet, but I managed to clean it up. She felt so bad about it, she went to bed early, said she was tired. Bayo frowned slightly. "Is she okay? Should I check on her?" "She's fine, Bayo. Just a tired little girl. Let her sleep." He accepted this explanation without question. After all, why wouldn't he? Funk had been nothing but wonderful to them. Over the following months, the abuse escalated, always carefully hidden from Bayo's view. The beatings started small, a slap here, a pinch there, always accompanied by warnings. "If you tell your father, I'll tell him you're lying, and he'll believe me, not you. He always believes me." Kemi learned to be silent. She learned to endure. She learned to hide the bruises and the fear. The food restrictions began gradually too. At first, Funk would simply give Kemi smaller portions than Bayo received. When Bayo commented on it, Funk explained, "She's a small child, Bayo. She doesn't need as much food as we do. Too much food will make her fat and unhealthy." Bayo accepted this explanation. He knew nothing about child nutrition, and Funk seemed so confident. But as the months passed, the portions grew smaller. Some days, when Bayo was at work, Kemi received no food at all. "Eat the air," Funk would say when Kemi asked for food. "It's free. That's all you deserve." The chores started as normal household tasks, making her bed, putting away her toys. But soon Funk added more. Wash the dishes, sweep the floors, scrub the bathroom, polish the furniture. By the time Kemi was 5, she was doing more housework than most adults, her small body exhausted by tasks far beyond her years. "You're lucky. I let you live in my house," Funk would say as Kemi worked. "If it weren't for me, your father would have sent you away long ago. He doesn't want you, you know. He never did. I'm the only reason you're still here." Kemi didn't believe this. She remembered her father's love, his hugs, his bedtime stories, but doubt began to creep in. Why did Daddy never see what Funk did? Why did he always believe Funk over her? Maybe Funk was right. Maybe Daddy didn't really want her. The rare occasions when Kemi tried to tell her father what was happening ended exactly as Funk predicted. "Daddy, Funk doesn't give me food when you're gone. She beats me." Bayo would look at Funk, who would clasp her hands to her chest in wounded innocence. "Bayo, after everything I do for this child? I cook for her, I clean for her, I take care of her like she's my own. And this is the thanks I get. She's trying to turn you against me. You know how children can be jealous of a new mother figure." And Bayo, seeing the lavish meals Funk prepared in his presence, the gentle pats on Kemi's head, the outward appearance of loving care, would believe her. "Kemi, don't tell lies," he would scold gently. "Your stepmother is good too. You should be grateful." The word stepmother cut Kemi deeply. Funk was not her stepmother, not legally, not officially, but her father spoke as if she were, as if she had the same rights and responsibilities as a real mother. After these failed attempts to tell the truth, Funk's punishments would be worse. Longer hours of work, less food, more severe beatings. You see? Funk would whisper as she hit Kemi. I told you he wouldn't believe you. He loves me, not you. He will always love me, not you. Kemi learned to be silent. She learned to endure, and she learned that the only person she could trust was herself. By the time Kemi was 5.5, she had become a shadow of the vibrant child she once was. Her cheeks, once plump with childhood health, were hollow. Dark circles ringed her eyes from lack of sleep. She moved like a ghost through the house, silent, invisible, barely alive. The neighbors noticed. Mama Nkechi, in particular, watched with growing concern as the child who used to run and play in the yard became a figure she barely saw anymore. One afternoon, she caught Kemi in the backyard, hanging laundry that was almost bigger than she was. Kemi, come here, my child. Kemi looked around fearfully, checking to see if Funk was watching. She crept to the fence. Take this, Mama Nkechi whispered, slipping a small wrapped package through a gap in the fence. Inside was jollof rice and fried plantain. Eat quickly, hide the evidence. That woman will be the death of you, I swear. Kemi ate like a starving animal, which she was. The food was gone in seconds, the wrapper stuffed into her pocket to dispose of later. She thanked Mama Nkechi with tears in her eyes and ran back to her chores. But Funk noticed. Funk always noticed. The weeks before Bayo's business trip were tense. Funk had heard him mention the possibility of a 2-week training in Lagos, and her mind immediately began calculating. If she could have him alone, really alone, without the child as a distraction, she could solidify her position. She could make him see that they belonged together. That Kemi was an obstacle to their happiness, that perhaps it would be best if the child went to boarding school or to live with relatives. She didn't share these thoughts with Bayo, of course. Instead, she pretended to be supportive. A training in Lagos? That sounds wonderful, Bayo. You deserve this opportunity. Don't worry about Kemi and me, we'll be fine. It will give us a chance to bond, just the two of us. Bayo was relieved by her enthusiasm. He had worried that she might feel abandoned, left alone with his daughter for 2 weeks. But her support made him feel that everything was fine, that his family was in good hands. The night before he left, he tucked Kemi into bed, holding her a little longer than usual. I'll be back in 2 weeks, my love, he whispered. Be good for Funk. I'll bring you something special from Lagos. Kemi wanted to scream. She wanted to grab his hand and beg him not to go. She wanted to tell him everything, the beatings, the hunger, the cruel words. But she remembered what happened last time she tried. She remembered the beating that followed. She remembered Funk's whispered threats. So she simply nodded and said, Okay, Daddy, I'll be good. Bayo kissed her forehead and left the room, never seeing the tears that slid silently down her cheeks after he closed the door. The next morning, he kissed them both goodbye, Funk at the door, Kemi still in bed, and drove to the airport, excited about the professional development opportunity ahead. He had no idea that he was leaving his daughter in the hands of her worst nightmare. He had no idea that the 2 weeks ahead would be the worst of Kemi's young life. He had no idea that by the time he returned, everything would have changed. The mask of kindness the moment the front door closed behind Bayo. The atmosphere in the house on Adamula Street shifted like a storm front moving in. Funk stood in the living room, her back to Kemi, her shoulders tense. For a long moment she didn't move. Then slowly she turned around. The transformation was terrifying and complete. The soft, caring expression she wore whenever Bayo was present had vanished. In its place was something cold and hard, a mask of cruelty that made Kemi's blood run cold despite the morning warmth streaming through the windows. So, Funk said, her voice low and deliberate, the king has left his castle. Now we can finally have some fun. Kemi stood frozen in the hallway, clutching the small stuffed rabbit her mother had given her years ago. It was the only comfort object she had left, the only thing that still carried the scent of happier times. Don't just stand there like a useless statue, Funk snapped. Come here. Kemi's legs moved of their own accord, carrying her toward the woman who now held absolute power over her life. She stopped a few feet away, her eyes downcast, her body trembling. Look at me when I'm talking to you. Kemi raised her eyes. Funk's face was close now, so close Kemi could see the tiny lines around her mouth, the cold calculation in her eyes. Your father is gone for 2 weeks, Funk said slowly, savoring each word. 2 weeks of him not being here to protect you. 2 weeks of just you and me. Do you understand what that means? Kemi nodded, not trusting her voice. Say it. It means you're in charge. Funk smiled, and it was the most frightening thing Kemi had ever seen. That's right, I'm in charge, and here are the new rules. She walked to the living room and sat down on the sofa, crossing her legs elegantly. Kemi remained standing where she was. Rule number 1, you will wake up at a.m. every morning. Not 5:01, not 5:02, 5 o'clock. You will come to my room and wake me to show me you're awake. If I have to come find you, there will be consequences. Kemi nodded. Rule number 2. You will clean this house from top to bottom every single day. Floors will be swept and mopped. Furniture will be dusted. Bathrooms will be scrubbed. Kitchen will be spotless, and you will do it all before I wake up at a.m. Kemi's eyes widened. The house was not small. Cleaning it completely would take hours. Rule number 3. You will not sit down, ever. If I catch you sitting, you will be beaten. If I catch you resting, you will be beaten. If I catch you sleeping during the day, you will be beaten. Is that clear? Yes, Ma. Rule number 4. You will speak only when spoken to. You will not ask questions. You will not make requests. You will not complain. Your voice does not exist in this house except when I give you permission to use it. Kemi's throat tightened, but she nodded again. Rule number 5. Food. Funk's smile widened. You will eat what I give you when I give it to you, which will not be often. You are a burden, Kemi. You cost money to feed, money to clothe, money to house. Your father wastes our resources on you when he should be spending them on me. So you will eat as little as possible. Consider it your contribution to this household. Tears pricked Kemi's eyes, but she fought them back. Crying would only make things worse. Rule number 6. You will not speak to the neighbors. You will not go near the fence. You will not accept anything from anyone. If I find out you've been talking to Mama Nkechi or anyone else, the beating you receive will make everything before seem like a gentle pat. Do you understand? Yes, Ma. Rule number 7. You will sleep standing up in the corner of the living room every night. No bed for you. Beds are for people who deserve comfort. You do not deserve comfort. You will stand in that corner from the time I go to bed until the time you wake me at a.m. If I check on you and find you sitting or lying down, you will. Wish you had never been born. Kemi's heart plummeted. No sleep? For 2 weeks? She was only 5 years old. Her body needed rest. Her mind needed rest, but she knew better than to argue. Rule number 8. You will not tell your father anything about this when he returns. If you so much as hint at what happened here, I will know. And I will make the rest of your life so miserable that you will beg me to kill you just to make it stop. Your father loves me, Kemi. He chose me. He will always choose me. If you try to turn him against me, I will destroy you. Do you believe me? Kemi believed her. With every fiber of her being, she believed her. Yes, Ma. Funk stood and walked toward Kemi, stopping directly in front of her. She reached out and took Kemi's chin in her hand, forcing the child to meet her eyes. You are nothing, she whispered. Your mother was nothing. She died because she was weak, because she couldn't even give birth without killing herself and her baby. You are her daughter, so you are weak too. But I am going to make you stronger. I am going to teach you what it means to suffer, so that you appreciate every scrap of kindness I choose to show you. By the time your father returns, you will understand your place in this world, and your place is beneath me. She released Kemi's chin and stepped back. Start with the kitchen. I want it spotless by the time I'm ready for breakfast. And remember, no sitting. Kemi walked to the kitchen on legs that felt like rubber. She found a scrub brush under the sink, filled a bucket with water and soap, and got down on her hands and knees to scrub the floor. Behind her, she heard Funk settle onto the sofa and turn on the television, laughing at something on a comedy show. The first day of her nightmare had begun. The days blurred together after that. Kemi woke at a.m. as instructed, her body aching from the night before. Standing in the corner for hours had left her legs stiff and sore, her feet swollen. But she forced herself to move, to climb the stairs to Funk's room, to knock softly on the door. I'm awake, Ma, she whispered through the door. A grunt from inside was the only response. Kemi took it as permission to begin her chores. The house was enormous to her small frame. She scrubbed the kitchen floor on her hands and knees, then moved to the living room, then the hallway, then the 2 bathrooms. She dusted every surface, polished every piece of furniture, made Funk's bed, washed the previous day's dishes, and cleaned the windows until they sparkled. By the time Funk emerged from her bedroom around 8:30, Kemi had been working for 3.5 hours without a break. Funk surveyed the house with a critical eye, running her finger along surfaces to check for dust. Finding none, she grunted with grudging approval. Acceptable. Make me tea. Kemi made tea, her small hands carefully handling the hot water. She served it to Funk, who was now sitting on the sofa reading a magazine. Stand over there, Funk said, waving toward the corner. Don't move until I tell you. Kemi stood in the corner, facing the wall, for the next 2 hours while Funk read her magazine, made phone calls, and generally ignored her existence. Her legs screamed for relief. Her empty stomach growled. But she didn't move. Around a.m., Funk finally acknowledged her. You can clean the backyard now, and don't let me catch you talking to that nosy neighbor. Kemi spent the next 3 hours in the backyard, sweeping, weeding, and organizing the storage shed. She saw Mama Nkechi once, hanging laundry on her line, and their eyes met briefly. Kemi quickly looked away, terrified of what Funk might do if she saw them communicating. Around p.m., Funk called her inside and threw a piece of bread at her feet. Eat. Kemi picked up the bread, which had fallen on the floor, and ate it in small, careful bites. It was stale and hard, but it was food. It was something. That's all you get today. Back to work. Kemi worked until evening, when Funk ordered her to stand in her corner for the night. She stood there as the sun set and darkness filled the room. As Funk watched television and ate a proper dinner that Kemi could smell but not taste, as the house grew quiet and Funk finally went to bed, and she stood there all night, fighting to stay awake, fighting to keep her eyes open, fighting to remain upright. By morning, her body was trembling with exhaustion. But she woke Funk at a.m. as instructed, and the cycle began again. On the third day, Kemi's body began to betray her. She was scrubbing the bathroom floor when her arms simply gave out. She collapsed onto the cold tiles, her body shaking with fatigue and hunger. For a moment, she just lay there, unable to move, unable to care about the consequences. She must have dozed off, because the next thing she knew, Funk was standing over her, her face twisted with rage. "What did I tell you about sitting down?" Kemi scrambled to her knees, terror flooding through her. "I'm sorry, Ma. I didn't mean to, I couldn't." Funk grabbed her by the arm and yanked her to her feet. In her other hand, she held the wooden coat hanger. "I told you there would be consequences." The beating that followed was the worst Kemi had ever experienced. The coat hanger came down again and again, leaving welts on her back, her legs, her arms. She curled into a ball, protecting her face, and screamed until her voice gave out. When Funk finally stopped, she was breathing heavily, her face flushed with exertion. "Get back to work, and remember I'm always watching." Kemi crawled back to the bathroom and continued scrubbing, tears streaming down her face, her body throbbing with pain. That night, standing in her corner, she discovered that the welts made it impossible to lean against the wall without causing excruciating pain. So she stood, truly stood, for the entire night, fighting unconsciousness. With every ounce of her being, by the fifth day, Kemi had eaten twice in 5 days. The first time had been the piece of bread on day 2. The second was on day 4, when Funk had thrown her some leftover scraps from her own dinner, cold stew and a piece of hard, dry gari. Her clothes hung loose on her rapidly shrinking frame. Her cheeks, once plump with childhood health, were hollow. Dark circles ringed her eyes. Like bruises. She moved through the house like a ghost, silent and invisible. Her energy reserves so depleted that every task required monumental effort. But she kept working. She had no choice. On the evening of the 5th day, as she stood in her corner waiting for Funk to go to bed, she heard a soft tapping at the kitchen window. She didn't move, she wasn't allowed to move, but her eyes shifted toward the sound. Through the window, she could see Mama Nkechi's face, worried and urgent. The neighbor woman was gesturing, trying to get her attention. Kemi's heart pounded. She wanted to go to the window, wanted to talk to someone kind, wanted to beg for help. But she remembered Funk's warning. If she was caught talking to the neighbors, the beating would be worse than anything she had experienced so far. She stayed in her corner, pretending not to see. After a few minutes, Mama Nkechi disappeared. On day 7, Kemi was hanging laundry in the backyard when she heard her name whispered. "Kemi, Kemi, over here." Mama Nkechi was at the fence, partially hidden by a large bush. Her face was creased with worry. Kemi looked toward the house. Funk was inside, watching television. She couldn't see the backyard from where she sat. Heart pounding, Kemi crept toward the fence. "Mama Nkechi, I can't talk to you. She'll kill me if she finds out." "I know, my child. I know, but I had to see you. Look at you, you're wasting away. What is that woman doing to you?" Tears filled Kemi's eyes. "She doesn't give me food. Only twice since Daddy left. And she makes me work all day and stand all night. I'm so tired, Mama Nkechi. I'm so hungry." Mama Nkechi's face crumpled with anguish. "Oh, my poor baby. My poor, poor baby." She reached through the fence and pressed something into Kemi's hand, a small wrapped package, warm from being held. "Take this. Eat it quickly. Hide the wrapper. I'll try to bring you more, but you must be careful. That woman is evil, but she's not stupid. If she catches you, it will be worse." Kemi stuffed the package into her pocket and scurried back to the laundry, her heart racing. She finished hanging the clothes, then slipped into the storage shed and devoured the food, jollof rice and fried plantain, the most delicious thing she had ever tasted. When she emerged, she carefully buried the wrapper at the bottom of the trash bin, covering it with other debris. For the rest of the day, she felt almost human. The food gave her energy, gave her hope. Maybe Mama Nkechi would bring more. Maybe she could survive this. But Funk noticed. She noticed that Kemi seemed slightly less depleted. She noticed a tiny smear of oil on Kemi's chin that the child had missed when wiping her mouth. She noticed Kemi's eyes flickering toward the fence whenever they were in the backyard. On the 9th day, Funk caught her. She had pretended to go to the market, leaving Kemi alone in the house. But instead of leaving, she had circled back and positioned herself where she could see the backyard through a gap in the curtains. When Mama Nkechi appeared at the fence and Kemi crept toward her, Funk was watching. She waited until the exchange was complete, until Kemi had taken the food and hidden it in her pocket. Then she walked outside. Kemi saw her coming and froze, the food burning a hole in her pocket. "Bring it here," Funk said quietly. Kemi's hands trembled as she pulled out the wrapped package and handed it over. Funk examined it, then looked at Mama Nkechi, who was still standing at the fence, her face a mixture of fear and defiance. "Mind your own business," Funk said coldly. "This is none of your concern." "This child is my concern," Mama Nkechi shot back. "I've known her since she was a baby. I watched her mother carry her. I will not stand by while you will stand by, or you will regret it." Funk's voice was low and dangerous. "I am the woman of this house. I have authority here. If you interfere again, I will tell Bayo that you've been trying to poison his daughter against me. I will tell him you've been filling her head with lies, and he will believe me, not you. Do you want that?" Mama Nkechi hesitated. She knew Bayo. She knew how much he trusted Funk, and she knew that Funk was right. He would probably believe her. "Leave us alone," Funk said. "This is our family business." Mama Nkechi looked at Kemi, her eyes filled with helpless sorrow. Then she turned and walked back into her own yard. Funk grabbed Kemi's arm and dragged her inside. "You stupid, stupid girl," she hissed, throwing Kemi to the floor. "What did I tell you about talking to the neighbors? What did I tell you?" "I'm sorry, Ma. I'm sorry. Please don't." The beating that followed was the worst yet. Funk used the coat hanger, her hand, even a belt she grabbed from the bedroom. She beat Kemi until her own arm grew tired, then she beat her some more. When she finally stopped, Kemi lay on the floor, barely conscious, her body a roadmap of pain. "Get up," Funk snarled. Kemi tried. She really tried, but her body wouldn't cooperate. Funk grabbed her by the hair and dragged her to the corner. "Stand, and if you fall, I'll beat you again." Kemi stood. Somehow, impossibly, she stood. Her body screamed in protest. Her vision blurred and darkened at the edges. But she stood. That night, standing in the corner, she heard Funk on the phone with Bayo. "Everything is fine here, darling. Kemi is being such a good girl. We're having a wonderful time bonding. Don't worry about us, just focus on your training. We'll be here when you get back." Kemi listened to the lies and felt something inside her break. Not her body that had been broken days ago. Something deeper. Something that had kept her hoping, kept her believing that somehow, some way, this would end. That something died on the 9th night, listening to Funk laugh and chat with her father as if nothing was wrong. Days 10, 11, and 12 were a blur of pain and exhaustion. Kemi moved through her tasks like an automaton, her mind detached from her body. She barely registered the beatings anymore, barely felt the hunger. She existed in a gray fog, waiting for something she didn't know what. On day 13, Mama Nkechi tried again. This time, she didn't call Kemi to the fence. Instead, she waited until Funk was in the front of the house, then tossed a small package over the fence into the backyard. It landed near the storage shed, hidden by tall grass. Kemi found it while working. She ate the contents, more rice, some meat in seconds, burying the evidence as before. But Funk had seen something from the window. She didn't catch Kemi in the act, but she suspected, and suspicion was enough. That night, after making Kemi stand in her corner, Funk went outside with a flashlight. She searched the yard until she found the buried wrapper. The beating that followed was the worst of all. Funk was beyond angry, she was enraged. Kemi scrambled to her knees, terror flooding through her. "I'm sorry, Ma. I didn't mean to, I couldn't." Funk grabbed her by the arm and yanked her to her feet. In her other hand, she held the wooden coat hanger. "I told you there would be consequences." The beating that followed was the worst Kemi had ever experienced. The coat hanger came down again and again, leaving welts on her back, her legs, her arms. She curled into a ball, protecting her face, and screamed until her voice gave out. When Funk finally stopped, she was breathing heavily, her face flushed with exertion. "Get back to work. And remember, I'm always watching." Kemi crawled back to the bathroom and continued scrubbing, tears streaming down her face, her body throbbing with pain. That night, standing in her corner, she discovered that the welts made it impossible to lean against the wall without causing excruciating pain. So she stood. Truly stood for the entire night, fighting unconsciousness with every ounce of her being. Day 4 brought a new level of cruelty. Funk had discovered that Kemi was surviving on the small amount of water she could drink from the bathroom tap when Funk wasn't looking. So she started locking the bathroom door. "If you're thirsty, you should have thought about that before you disobeyed me," Funk said, pocketing the key. By midday, Kemi's throat was parched. Her lips cracked and bleeding. She couldn't concentrate. She couldn't think. All she could do was work and dream of water. In the afternoon, Funk took pity on her, but not real pity. She filled a glass with water and held it in front of Kemi's face. "You want this?" Kemi nodded desperately. "Beg for it." Kemi dropped to her knees. "Please, Ma, please, I'm so thirsty. Please give me water." Louder. "Please, Ma. Please give me water. I'm begging you." Funk smiled and drank the water herself, right in front of Kemi. Then she refilled the glass and drank another. "That was refreshing," she said, setting down the empty glass. Back to work. Kemi watched the water go down Funk's throat and felt something inside her crack. Not break, she was too far gone for that. Just crack, eh? Little more. Day 5 brought food. Not much, a piece of cold, stale bread with some leftover stew scrapings. But it was something. Kemi ate it so fast she barely tasted it, then spent the next hour fighting the urge to vomit. Her stomach, shrunken from days of near starvation, couldn't handle even that small amount. She threw up in the backyard, hidden behind the storage shed. Then she buried the evidence and went back to work. That evening, Funk noticed she was even weaker than before. "What's wrong with you?" "Nothing, Ma. You look worse than yesterday. Did you eat something you shouldn't have?" "No, Ma." Funk's eyes narrowed. She grabbed Kemi's chin and forced her mouth open, examining her teeth, her tongue. Finding nothing, she released her with a shove. "If you're sick, you'd better not slow down. I don't care if you're dying, the work still needs to be done." Kemi nodded and went back to her corner. Day 6, 7, and 8 blurred together. Kemi stopped counting the days, stopped hoping for rescue, stopped feeling anything but the endless cycle of work and pain and hunger. She moved through her tasks like an automaton, her mind detached from her body. Funk continued her cruelties, but they no longer registered as cruelties. They were simply what happened. This was simply what life was. At night, standing in her corner, Kemi would sometimes think about her mother. She would try to remember Adisua's face, her voice, her smell, but the memories were fading, replaced by the gray fog of survival. She wondered if her mother could see her from heaven. She wondered if her mother was ashamed of how weak she had become. She wondered if her mother would even recognize the hollow-eyed creature standing in the corner, waiting for a dawn that brought only more pain. On day 9, Kemi discovered that Mama Nkechi had been watching. She was hanging laundry in the backyard, yet another chore added to her endless list, when she heard her name whispered. "Kemi, Kemi, over here." Mama Nkechi was at the fence, partially hidden by a large bush. Her face was creased with worry. Kemi looked toward the house. Funk was inside, watching television. She couldn't see the backyard from where she sat. Heart pounding, Kemi crept toward the fence. "Mama Nkechi, I can't talk to you. She'll kill me if she finds out." "I know, my child. I know, but I had to see you. Look at you, you're wasting away. What is that woman doing to you?" Tears filled Kemi's eyes, the first tears she had shed in days. "She doesn't give me food, only twice since Daddy left, and she makes me work all day and stand all night. I'm so tired, Mama Nkechi. I'm so hungry." Mama Nkechi's face crumpled with anguish. "Oh, my poor baby, my poor, poor baby." She reached through the fence and pressed something into Kemi's hand, a small wrapped package, warm from being held. "Take this. Eat it quickly. Hide the wrapper. I'll try to bring you more, but you must be careful. That woman is evil, but she's not stupid. If she catches you, it will be worse." Kemi stuffed the package into her pocket and scurried back to the laundry, her heart racing. She finished hanging the clothes, then slipped into the storage shed and devoured the food: jollof rice and fried plantain, the most delicious thing she had ever tasted. When she emerged, she carefully buried the wrapper at the bottom of the trash bin, covering it with other debris. For the rest of the day, she felt almost human. The food gave her energy, gave her hope. Maybe Mama Nkechi would bring more. Maybe she could survive this. But Funk noticed. She noticed that Kemi seemed slightly less depleted. She noticed a tiny smear of oil on Kemi's chin that the child had missed when wiping her mouth. She noticed Kemi's eyes flickering toward the fence whenever they were in the backyard. On day 10, Funk caught her. She had pretended to go to the market, leaving Kemi alone in the house. But instead of leaving, she had circled back and positioned herself where she could see the backyard through a gap in the curtains. When Mama Nkechi appeared at the fence and Kemi crept toward her, Funk was watching. She waited until the exchange was complete, until Kemi had taken the food and hidden it in her pocket. Then she walked outside. Kemi saw her coming and froze, the food burning a hole in her pocket. "Bring it here," Funk said quietly. Kemi's hands trembled as she pulled out the wrapped package and handed it over. Funk examined it, then looked at Mama Nkechi, who was still standing at the fence, her face a mixture of fear and defiance. "Mind your own business," Funk said coldly. "This is none of your concern." "This child is my concern," Mama Nkechi shot back. "I've known her since she was a baby. I watched her mother carry her. I will not stand by while you will stand by, or you will regret it." Funk's voice was low and dangerous. "I am the woman of this house. I have authority here. If you interfere again, I will tell Bayo that. You've been trying to poison his daughter against me. I will tell him you've been filling her head with lies, and he will believe me, not you. Do you want that? Mama Nkechi hesitated. She knew Bayo. She knew how much he trusted Funk, and she knew that Funk was right. He would probably believe her. Leave us alone, Funk said. This is our family business. Mama Nkechi looked at Kemi, her eyes filled with helpless sorrow. Then she turned and walked back into her own yard. Funk grabbed Kemi's arm and dragged her inside. You stupid, stupid girl, she hissed, throwing Kemi to the floor. What did I tell you about talking to the neighbors? What did I tell you? I'm sorry, Ma. I'm sorry. Please don't. The beating that followed was the worst yet. Funk used the coat hanger, her hand, even a belt she grabbed from the bedroom. She beat Kemi until her own arm grew tired, then she beat her some more. When she finally stopped, Kemi lay on the floor, barely conscious, her body a roadmap of pain. Get up, Funk snarled. Kemi tried. She really tried, but her body wouldn't cooperate. Funk grabbed her by the hair and dragged her to the corner. Stand, and if you fall, I'll beat you again. Kemi stood. Somehow, impossibly, she stood. Her body screamed in protest. Her vision blurred and darkened at the edges. But she stood. Day 11 was a blur of pain. Kemi could barely move, but she had to work. Funk showed no mercy, no recognition that the child she was abusing was only 5 years old. The work must be done. The rules must be followed. Kemi worked. She didn't know how, but she worked. That evening, standing in her corner, she heard Funk on the phone with Bayo. Everything is fine here, darling. Kemi is being such a good girl. We're having a wonderful time bonding. Don't worry about us, just focus on your training. We'll be here when you get back. Kemi listened to the lies and felt nothing. The part of her that might have felt anger or betrayal had gone numb days ago. Day 12 brought a new horror. Funk had decided that Kemi wasn't suffering enough. She needed something more, something that would break her completely. She found it in the form of Kemi's stuffed rabbit, the only possession that mattered, the only link to her mother that remained. Funk held it up in front of Kemi. This old thing, you still sleep with this like a baby? Kemi's heart lurched. Please, Ma, that was my mother's. She gave it to me when I was born. I know. Funk's smile was evil. That's why I'm going to destroy it. No. The word escaped before Kemi could stop it. Please, Ma, please don't. I'll do anything. I'll work harder. I'll never complain. Please don't hurt my rabbit. Funk's eyes glittered with satisfaction. She had found the weak spot. She had found the thing that would finally break this stubborn child. She took the rabbit and in front of Kemi's horrified eyes, slowly pulled it apart. She ripped the seams, pulled out the stuffing, tore the fabric into pieces. There, she said, dropping the remains on the floor. Now you have nothing. Now you're truly alone. Kemi stared at the scattered pieces of her only comfort, and something inside her died, not her will to survive that was too strong to kill completely, but her hope, her innocence, her belief that somehow, someday, things would get better, that died on day 12, watching her mother's last gift destroyed by cruelty. Day 13 was the longest day of Kemi's life. She worked mechanically, her mind blank, her body moving on autopilot. She didn't feel the hunger anymore, didn't feel the pain. She was empty, hollow, a shell. Funk seemed disappointed by her lack of reaction. She tried new cruelties, pinching, slapping, verbal abuse, but Kemi didn't respond. She had gone somewhere else, somewhere inside herself where Funk couldn't reach. That night, standing in her corner, Kemi made a decision. She would survive. Not for her father, not for hope, not for any future happiness. She would survive simply because she refused to let Funk win. If she died, Funk would be happy. If she gave up, Funk would have succeeded. So she would survive. She would endure. And someday, somehow, she would find a way to escape. Day 14. The last full day. Funk was in a strange mood, almost giddy, almost excited. Tomorrow Bayo would return, and her perfect performance would resume. She had survived 2 weeks of playing the evil stepmother without getting caught. She had broken the child without leaving marks that couldn't be explained away. She was proud of herself. You know, she said to Kemi that evening, you really should thank me. I've made you stronger. I've taught you what the world is really like. When you grow up, you'll realize that I did you a favor. Kemi said nothing. She had learned not to speak unless spoken to. Your father will be home tomorrow. You will smile and hug him and tell him how much you missed him. You will not say a word about what happened here. If you do, I will know, and I will make the rest of your life so miserable that these 2 weeks will seem like a vacation. Do you understand? Kemi nodded. Good girl. Funk actually patted her head. Now go to bed. For real tonight you can sleep in your bed. Can't have you looking too terrible when your father gets home. Kemi walked to her room and lay down on her bed. It felt strange after so many nights standing. Her body didn't know how to relax anymore. She stared at the ceiling. Thinking about tomorrow, her father would come home. She would have to pretend. She would have to lie. But somewhere, deep in the place that Funk hadn't been able to reach, a small spark remained. A tiny ember of hope that maybe, just maybe, someday she would find a way to tell the truth. She held on to that spark as she finally, mercifully fell asleep. The next morning, Kemi woke to the sound of a car in the driveway. Her heart lurched. Her body tensed. The nightmare was ending, but a new one was about to begin. She had to perform. She had to pretend. She had to be the happy, loving daughter that Funk expected her to be. The door opened, and there he was. Her father, looking tired but happy, a gift bag in his hand. "Kemi, my baby." He dropped the bag and swept her into his arms. Kemi hugged him back, her face buried in his shoulder, her body trembling. "I missed you so much, Daddy," she whispered. It was the truest thing she had said in 2 weeks. The desperate flight on the 12th day of Bayo's absence, Funk's suspicion was confirmed. She had seen Kemi talking to Mama Nkechi by the fence, had seen the exchange of something wrapped. When Kemi came back inside, Funk was waiting. "You've been begging for food from neighbors?" Her voice was low, controlled, which made it even more terrifying than when she screamed, "After everything I do for you. You bring shame to this house? You make me look like a bad person? Please, Mama Funk, don't you dare call me Mama." Funk grabbed Kemi's arm, her nails digging deep into the thin flesh. "I am not your mother. Your mother is dead and rotting in her grave, and you'll join her soon if you embarrass me like this again." She raised the wooden coat hanger, and Kemi braced herself for the beating. But something different happened this time. Perhaps it was the accumulated hunger and exhaustion. Perhaps it was the memory of her mother's gentle face. Perhaps it was simply survival instinct kicking in. When Funk's grip loosened for just a moment, Kemi ran. She ran through the living room, out the front door, down the steps, and through the gate before Funk could even react. She ran down Adamola Street, her thin legs pumping, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She could hear Funk behind her, screaming, running, gaining. "Come back here, you useless girl. When I catch you, you will wish you had never been born." Kemi turned a corner, then another, her lungs burning, her vision blurring. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew she had to get away. She had to hide, and then she saw it. A long, black, shiny car was parked by the curb, its engine humming quietly. It was the kind of car she had only ever seen in magazines, so clean it reflected the world around it, so expensive it seemed to belong to another universe entirely. The rear door was slightly ajar. In that moment of pure desperation, Kemi didn't think about consequences. She didn't think about who might be inside. She only saw a hiding place, a sanctuary, a chance. She pulled the door open and threw herself inside, pulling it shut behind her with a soft click. She landed on the floor of the back seat, her body curling instinctively into a tight ball. Her heart was pounding so loudly she was sure it could be heard outside the car. She squeezed her eyes shut, praying to the God her mother used to tell her about, the God who lived in the beautiful stories before everything became a nightmare. It was only after a long moment that she realized she was not alone, the billionaire's car. The man in the back seat was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. He was older than her father, with streaks of gray at his temples and the kind of face that spoke of power and money and importance. He was dressed in an immaculate dark suit that probably cost more than her father made in a year. For a long, terrible moment, neither of them moved. Then Kemi found her voice, small and trembling, barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, sir. Please, sir, don't be angry. Please, just hide me. She wants to beat me. My daddy's girlfriend. She will kill me." The man's gaze intensified, his eyes narrowing as he studied her face. He saw the fear, yes, the terror of a hunted animal, but something else tugged at his memory. The shape of her eyes, the set of her jaw, the particular way her nose curved, it was like seeing a ghost of a face he knew from years ago. "What is your name?" His voice was calm, deep, not unkind. "Kemi, sir. Kemisola, and your father?" "Who is your father?" Kemi hesitated for just a moment. Was this man safe? Could she trust him? But she had no other options, no other hope. "My daddy is Mr. Bayo Adewale." The man's face changed. Recognition flickered in his eyes, followed by surprise, then concern. Chief alias Egan Williams, for that was his name, had been at the University of Ibadan with Bayo. They had been close friends, had studied together, had dreamed together. Life had taken them in different directions, Bayo into education, Sigun, into business that had made him one of the wealthiest men in Nigeria, but the bond of those university years never fully dissolved. He had heard about Adesuwa's death through mutual friends. He had meant to reach out, to offer condolences, but life had gotten in the way as it always does. And now, here was Bayo's daughter, trembling on the floor of his car, looking like she hadn't eaten in days. Without hesitation, Chief Williams pulled out his phone. "Outside." The car, they could hear Funk's voice growing closer, more frantic. Kemi, Kemi, come out wherever you are. When I find you, you will regret this day. Chief Williams held up a finger, signaling Kemi to stay quiet. He made a video call. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a tired-looking face appeared on the screen. Bayo Adewale blinked in confusion at his phone. Sigun? Is that you? After all these years? Bayo, my old friend. I don't have time for pleasantries. Look, Chief Williams turned the camera towards the small, terrified figure on the floor of his car. Bayo's face on the screen went through a series of transformations: confusion, then recognition, then horror. Kemi? Kemi? Is that you? My daughter, what is happening? Where are you? Why are you on the floor? At the sound of her father's voice, Kemi's carefully constructed walls crumbled. Tears streamed down her dirty face, cutting tracks through the grime. Daddy. Daddy, please come home. She didn't give me food, Daddy. She beats me every day. She said my mother is dead and I have nobody. She made me stand all night and work all day, and I only ate twice in 2 weeks. I ran away because she wanted to beat me for eating from Mama Nkechi. Please, Daddy, please come home. Bayo's face crumpled. In his daughter's gaunt features, in her hollow cheeks and terrified eyes, he saw the truth he had been too blind to see. The carefully constructed lies of the past year shattered into a million pieces. His voice, when he finally spoke, was thick with tears and cold, hard rage. Kemi, stay with my friend. He is a good man. I am coming home. I am coming home right now. The truth revealed. Chief Williams ended the call and gently helped Kemi onto the seat beside him. He removed his jacket and wrapped it around her thin shoulders. She was shivering, whether from fear or cold or hunger, he couldn't tell. Driver, he said quietly, take us home. As the car pulled away from the curb, Kemi caught a glimpse through the window of Funk standing on the corner, her face twisted with rage and confusion as she watched the expensive car disappear into traffic. For the first time in 2 weeks, Kemi felt something other than fear. She felt safe. At Chief Williams's mansion in Ibadan's most exclusive neighborhood, Kemi was treated like royalty. The chief's housekeeper, a motherly woman named Grace, took charge immediately. She bathed Kemi in a bathroom larger than the entire room Kemi slept in at home. She dressed her in clean clothes that belonged to the chief's granddaughter, who sometimes visited, and she prepared a meal, real food, warm and plentiful, that Kemi ate slowly, carefully, afraid it might disappear. Chief Williams sat with her while she ate, asking gentle questions about her life, her school, her mother. When Kemi spoke about Adesua, her face lit up with the first genuine smile he had seen. My mama was the best mama in the whole world, she said. She used to sing to me and tell me stories and make the best jollof rice. But she went to heaven to be with the baby. Funk says it's my fault she died, but I don't think that's true. Do you think that's true, sir? Chief Williams felt his heart crack open. No, Kemi, it is absolutely not true. Your mother's death was not your fault. Never think that. By the time Kemi fell asleep that night, in a soft bed with clean sheets and a full stomach, Chief Williams had made a decision. He would not let this child return to that house until he was certain she would be safe. Bayo arrived the next morning, having taken the first available flight from Lagos and driven straight from the airport. When he saw his daughter, really saw her, not the carefully managed glimpses Funk had allowed, he broke down completely. He held Kemi in his arms and sobbed into her hair, apologizing over and over. I'm so sorry. My baby, I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. I'm so sorry I left you with that woman. It will never happen again. I promise you, it will never happen again. Kemi, who had learned to survive without her father's protection, allowed herself to be held. She allowed herself to cry. And for the first time in a very long time, she allowed herself to hope. The reckoning Bayo drove home with Kemi safely beside him in the car. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. His jaw was set in a line of grim determination. The fear and guilt of the past were being transformed into something else, a cold, focused rage. Funk was waiting at the house, a practiced look of worry on her face. When she saw Bayo's car pull into the driveway, she rushed out, her performance ready. Bayo, thank God you're back. That stubborn girl ran away from home. I've been so worried, searching everywhere. Stop. The word cut through her monologue like a knife. Bayo got out of the car, then opened the passenger door and helped Kemi out. He kept his daughter's hand firmly in his own. I saw her, I spoke to her, I know everything. Funk's face flickered just for a moment with something that might have been panic. But she recovered quickly, her expression shifting to wounded innocence. Bayo, you can't believe everything a child tells you. You know how children exaggerate. I've been nothing but good to her, you've been nothing but a liar. Bayo's voice was cold, controlled, utterly devoid of the warmth he had once shown her. Pack your things and get out of my house. Now. For a moment, Funk was speechless. Then her face contorted, the mask finally dropping completely. the sweet, caring stepmother vanished, and in her place stood the bitter, vengeful woman Bayo had known years ago. "Fine," she spat. "Throw me out. After everything I've done for you. After I took care of your house and your child. But you will pay for this, Bayo Adewale. You will pay." She stormed into the house, and for a few minutes they could hear the sounds of drawers opening and closing, things being thrown into bags. Then she emerged, dragging 2 large suitcases behind her. At the gate, she stopped and turned, a cruel smile spreading across her face. "Oh, by the way," she said, her voice dripping with malice, "I'm pregnant. I'm carrying your child. You can throw me out, but you can't throw out your own flesh and blood. I'll be back, Bayo, and this time I won't leave." She walked away, leaving Bayo standing at the gate, the weight of her words pressing down on him. The final proof. The weeks that followed were tense. Funk made good on her threat, showing up at Bayo's workplace, at his church, at the homes of his friends and colleagues. She told anyone who would listen that Bayo had thrown her out while she was pregnant with his child, that he was an irresponsible man who didn't care about his own flesh and blood. The pressure was immense. Even some of Bayo's friends began to look at him differently. Whispers followed him wherever he went. But Bayo had learned his lesson about believing without proof. He had a plan. When Funk's pregnancy had advanced enough for the tests to be reliable, he approached her through a lawyer. He would not take her back, he said. But if the child was truly his, he would provide financial support. All she had to do was submit to a DNA test. Funk was confident. She agreed immediately, her smile smug and triumphant. She knew the child was Bayo's, it had to be. She had made sure of it. The test was conducted at a reputable clinic. Samples were taken, sealed, and sent to the lab. The waiting period was agonizing. Bayo spent the time with Kemi, rebuilding their relationship, learning to be the father he should have been all along. They went to the park together. They cooked together. They talked about Adesua the good. Memories, the happy times, the love that would never die. When the envelope finally arrived, Bayo opened it with steady hands. He read the words once, then again, to make sure he wasn't mistaken. The child was not his. The relief was overwhelming, but it was quickly replaced by a cold, hard anger. Funk had not only abused his daughter and destroyed his peace she had tried to trap him with. A lie that would have bound him to her forever. He didn't confront her himself. He let his lawyer handle it. The results were delivered to Funk with a restraining order and a notice that any further harassment would result in legal action. Funk's response was silence. For the first time in years, she had nothing to say, a new dawn. 6 years later, Kemi sat at her desk in her bedroom, homework spread out before her. At 10 years old, she was healthy, happy, and thriving. The hollow cheeks had filled out, the dark circles had vanished, and her eyes sparkled with the joy of a child who knew she was loved. The house on Adamala Street had been sold shortly after Funk left. Too many bad memories, Bayo had said. They had moved to a new neighborhood, a fresh start in a home where every corner held happy moments instead of painful ones. Bayo had kept his promise. He never let Kemi out of his sight again, not in a smothering way, but in the way of a father who had learned the value of presence. He was there for school plays and parent-teacher conferences. He was there for breakfast every morning and dinner every night. He was there to help with homework and to listen. 2 stories about friends and teachers and the small dramas of a 10-year-old's life. Chief Williams had become a regular presence in their lives too. He was Uncle Sagun now, the man who had saved Kemi on the worst day of her life. He came for birthdays and holidays, and his granddaughter, the one whose clothes Kemi had borrowed that first night, had become Kemi's closest friend. "Thinking about something?" Bayo asked, appearing in the doorway with a cup of hot chocolate. Kemi smiled, just remembering. He sat on the edge of her bed, handing her the cup. "Good memories or bad ones?" "Both, I think." She wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "I remember being so scared in that car. And then I remember Uncle Sagun's face, how kind he was. I remember being so hungry, and then I remember Miss Grace's cooking. I remember the bad stuff, Daddy, but I remember the good stuff too." Bayo nodded, his eyes glistening. "That's important, Kemi. The bad stuff teaches us. The good stuff heals us. And you, my daughter, are the strongest person I know." Kemi leaned against him, and they sat together in comfortable silence, watching the evening sun paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. "Daddy," Kemi said after a while, "do you think Mama would be proud of me?" Bayo kissed the top of her head. "I don't think, Kemi. I know, your mother is looking down from heaven right now, and she is so proud of the woman you're becoming. Just like I am." Outside, the sounds of the neighborhood drifted in, children playing, mothers calling them home, the distant hum of evening traffic, ordinary sounds every day. Sounds, the sounds of life going on. Kemi closed her eyes and listened. And for the first time in a long time, she thought about the future, about who she might become, what she might do, the life she might build. The possibilities stretched out before her like an endless road, full of promise and hope. She thought about the little girl who had hidden in a stranger's car, so small and scared and alone. She thought about how close she had come to being destroyed by someone else's cruelty. And she thought about all the people her father, Uncle Sagun, Miss Grace, Mama Nkechi, who had helped her survive. One day, she decided, she would do the same for someone else. She would be the person who saw a child in trouble and reached out a helping hand. She would be the proof that kindness could overcome cruelty, that love could conquer hate, that even in the darkest moments, there was always hope. But for now, she was content to be here. In this moment, with her father beside her and a future full of possibility ahead. "Daddy?" she said softly. "Yes, my love. Thank you for coming back for me." Bayo held her tighter. "I will always come back for you, Kemi. Always." And in the warm glow of the evening light, father and daughter sat together, healing and hoping and building a new life from the ashes of the old. The nightmare was over. The dawn had finally come. Thank you for watching. Like this video if you felt Kemi's pain and rooted for her survival. Comment below. What was your favorite chapter? Which moment made you cry the most? Who's your favorite character? I read every comment. Subscribe and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Share with your friends, your family, your WhatsApp groups. Let's get Kemi's story 2 millions.